Hello peeps, this is a Hillbilly halfwit here, Gaza, and today we're going to talk about some climate change stuff. It's quite interesting. I'm going to show you two videos, one short one and one longer one. The first one is about a guy that's actually found out where all the money is going in this thing. So it's basically like a civil service nudge unit, think tank thing, all these groups that are corrupting your minds of your children and everybody to think the world is going to end. And the next one is about the Scottish climate minister who have missed all their targets, and they managed to spend 4.7 billion and got none of their targets done on climate change. And a really good reporter skewers her. And you see, like I always say, when you're in a cult, you refuse to accept that what you've done is wrong. That's exactly that's at the latter part of the video. So I'd advise you to watch all of that one, especially the end of the last one, because she's actually skewered so bad, but she still won't admit it. So remember, they're spending all this money, and she's actually threatening to put new laws in to make the poor in society conform to these new climate laws. So scary stuff, eh? So please comment, rate and subscribe and share this stuff out there, because it's always nice to see you lot connecting and commenting. So let's get started. Now there's old George Orwell. Boy, did I call it what, George Orwell. He was dead on. I read some of his books years ago, and it's spot on. Every record has been destroyed or falsified, every book rewritten, every picture repainted, every statue, street and building renamed, every date altered, and the process continues day by day. Nothing exists except the endless presence in which the party is always right. George Orwell, 1984. Now that is what you'll see in the latter video with that Scottish girl. It's a little bit longer, but I won't talk over it, so watch it all if you don't mind. This is this video.
We find in both climate and air pollution lobbying organizations, we find they're the same people, the same organizations, backed by the same billionaires. All the groups that are active in climate change just set themselves up, they rebrand themselves, they restyle themselves as air pollution campaigns. These are not grassroots campaigns. These are not people who have just sort of organized themselves and decided to tackle air pollution or to tackle climate change. These are very much top-down organizations. They come from very big money. They're groups like UK 100, which most people on the street would never even heard of. And sort of superficially membership organizations like Friends of the Earth, which you may have heard of, but most people aren't members of. They're not as they're not as widely. They're not as wide as sort of political parties or the such like. But they're very effective at local campaigning campaigning at the local level. So that it looks like a grassroots movement. They're organized. They're able to respond very quickly to these kind of policy initiatives. Anyway, I won't bore you with that. I think they've been able to capitalize on what has become a sort of a near-terminal democratic deficit, where governments, all levels, not just local level and national levels, have completely separated from the public. There's no sort of tangible connections left between them.
Well, there we are. That's what he's saying. What he's saying is that they're using the type of sloganing like this to corrupt the younger minds in our society and the sheep and the followers to think they're doing good. If you look on the right of the photo, they are actually making them money. It's a confidence trick, and it is a snake oil salesman. Most of us can see that. So they decide to have a go at us instead of calling out the real problem. Now, as I always say, follow the money, and the people advising all this stuff are making shed loads of money, billions. Lots of these academics raking it in Wales, 4.8 billion in Wales. It's a fifth of the total budget we're spending, and we got people poor, can't afford to eat anything. And it's shameful. Anyway, this is the next one I've got. Is when a journalist skewers the Scottish climate minister, and she refuses to say she hasn't met the target, even though they put the target there. They want to get 75% of carbon out of the Scotland, even though it's going to kill it's going to hurt the poorest in society, and they still want to force it on them and tax them and tax them and tax them to get their little priority done. It's a cult, doomsday cult. Yeah, listen to this one. Hold on, we just had this one in instead. The propagandist's purpose is to make one set of people forget that certain other sets of people are human. Aldous Huxley. Now that is what this lady is going to say now.
In the battle against climate change, the Scottish Government has adopted what it's hailed as world-leading targets. But are they now in danger of becoming pretty meaningless? Today, the Independent Climate Change Committee concluded it's no longer credible that Scotland will meet the goal of reducing emissions by 75% by 2030. The environmental experts also say there is no comprehensive strategy to decarbonise towards net zero, which ministers want to get to by 2045. The Cabinet Minister in charge of Scotland's climate change policies is Mary McCallan, who spoke to SCV's political editor Colin Mackay.
Climate Change Committee report is out today. It's a bit of a reality check for the Scottish Government, isn't it?
Well, what I would say, first of all, is that I absolutely value the advice of the Committee on Climate Change. They are our statutory advisors. I value the advice that's come out in this report today, but equally we've got ongoing dialogue with them. I think in respect of the 2030 comments that they have made, this is largely a re-articulation of the position that they set out when, on a cross-party basis, the Scottish Parliament set the 2030 targets in 2019. My general view is that the SNP and our partners, the Greens in government, are absolutely committed to tackling climate change. No government, frankly, can say that they're doing enough until we get to 2045, but it does no one any favours to underplay the magnitude of the challenge of that.
It's not quite a re-articulation, because in 2019 they said it was challenging. Now they're saying you're failing.
The Committee on Climate Change previously recommended a 70% reduction target at 2030, and as I say, the Scottish Parliament on a cross-party basis opted to vote for 75. They've always been clear that this was
and they
very
say you're failing. They say you're failing.
They say that we were pushing at the boundaries of what was doable, and they've re-articulated that today. Now, as I say, I take very seriously the advice of the CCC, and therefore I will give very careful consideration. I'm already giving active consideration to how I respond to it.
They're not saying you're pushing the boundaries, they're saying you're failing. They're saying you're failing to deliver.
What I was originally reflecting on is the fact that we are talking here about a transformation right across our economy and society, and nobody should underplay what's required in order to meet that. Scotland's targets were always exceptionally stretching. I think that was a good thing. I think that has meant that we have gotten further than we might otherwise have been. We are now nearly halfway to net zero. We continue to decarbonise faster than the UK as a whole, and I am really proud of the actions that we have taken in pursuit of that. But no government will ever be able to say they're doing enough, and I'll keep pushing for more.
But you can't be proud that the Committee on Climate Change says that you're failing to meet these targets. However stretching you are, you're failing.
I don't accept that, and it's all in the context.
It's in the report.
The Committee on Climate Change have been clear that they don't think there is a credible pathway to 2030. And I've already said, as any reasonable government will do, we will consider that. We're already considering very carefully how we respond to it. But in the time since we announced a climate emergency, Scotland has completed the world's largest offshore floating wind farm leasing round. 75% of all the trees and forests created in the UK have been in Scotland. We've developed low emission zones. We've got the most generous concessionary travel scheme for bus travel anywhere in the UK. We've banned single-use plastics. We have 37% of our oceans in protected areas. All of that has contributed to the progress we made. I don't underestimate the progress that's still to be made, though.
And yet, in 8 of the last 12 years, you've failed to meet your target, and now they say you're going to fail to meet your 2030 target. You're failing.
So I think there is something instructive there, which is to say that...
Do you accept that you're failing on this?
I accept the recommendation of the Committee on Climate Change that
Do you accept their analysis that you're failing?
I don't think that that is the bottom line analysis of the Committee
It's a
on
word
Climate
that they
Change.
use in the report.
They've talked about the 2030 target no
Non-speaker.
longer being credible. And I've already said that I need to...
Which means that you're failing to reach that.
Well, it's not the case. I mean, the Committee on Climate Change, for example, pointed out the progress that's been made on decarbonising Scotland's energy systems. They were complementary of the work we've undertaken this year on heat and buildings, a massive contributor to climate change. And there are other packages of work that we'll be taking forward
We have
this year.
these
The
automatons
two
who will
key
say
issues that I
anything
take
just
from
to
the
get the
report are a re-articulation
They
of their
are
view that
brainwashed
2030,
individuals.
75%, there is not a pathway there, and that they should have preferred that a climate change plan was in place for them to assess at this point. Now, I equally regret that we weren't able to take forward the climate change plan last year. It was a time of too much economic and political volatility.
Really, obviously.
Under the current regime, it isn't due until next year, and we're considering all of that now.
And when will we get the indication of that plan, the actual plan itself?
Well, I hope you'll understand that as our statutory advisors, if the advice that I have received is that there is a target on the statute book that is now no longer achievable, I have to consider how I
Civil
address
service
that, and
target.
legislation could be the option there. That's all being actively
They want
considered.
to
So you're due
legislate
to deliver a
on the
draft
poor
in
society
November,
to
you're
take
due
away
to
their
deliver the
rights.
plan in March next year, is that right?
Under the current regime, yes.
So what will you actually deliver on that? Will you meet those targets?
Well, I have
I mean,
to...
those are easier targets to meet because these are just for plans, aren't they?
Well, plans to decarbonise right across the whole economy of Scotland are not easy to produce. There's a lot of work that's already been done.
So you're saying you
in
might miss those target
pursuit-
dates as well?
What target dates?
The
Sorry.
target dates of March for a draft plan, November for a draft plan, and then March next year for an actual plan to deliver.
No, sorry, what I'm saying is under the current statutory regime, that's when they're due, but I've already said today that in light of the advice from the Committee on Climate Change, we are having to actively consider all options, including legislation.
Are you even going to hit the 2045 target?
I believe we will, absolutely. I am confident about Scotland's ability to meet mid-century net zero. Indeed, this morning, Chris Stark, in some of his commentary, was, despite having been quite clear about his view about 2030,
These people are fanatics. Power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. And that is what's going on here. We have brainwashed individuals who have decided to spend huge amounts of money off the poor to make the poor do something that they want to do. Pet project. It's absolute disgrace. Now, if you're still here, thank you. I totally understand if you haven't listened to this all, because that was a long one at the end there. But please comment, rate and subscribe. All the best, guys.